Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, folks, welcome tonight on this very special episode of Dominant Mets Nation. Right now, it is about almost 12 o'clock. It is 11:49 Eastern Standard Time. Sorry about that. And we have the Mets right now facing the San Diego Padres. Let's see how this works out. Currently, the New York Mets are in a bit of a jam. Folks, this is why I don't like to do things live. Right now, as we're speaking, and probably you saw this before me, Jose Butto just gives up a double. Padres are up 4-1. And honestly, right now, folks, I am not feeling good. But this video, we are going to talk about, break down some of the things in this game. But more importantly, we are eventually going to talk about trade targets. And wow. All right. Double down the left field line. Ronnie Mauricio, former shortstop. I'm not going to say he could have had that, but it's just the fact that the New York Mets aren't putting enough runs on the board to take the pressure off of the pitchers. And Butto, I mean, besides the last couple outings, hasn't been that impressive to me this year. Now the Mets find themselves in a 4-1 hole. Unfortunately, Juan Soto in the middle of the game, out of the game with a contusion to his back foot. Hopefully, it's just a bone bruise. They're going to take x-rays. Tomorrow, we should have the results of those. But boy, oh boy, if anything serious happened to Juan Soto, that would not feel good. Luckily, I mean, when he did get the injury tonight, he walked off the field kind of with a little limp, but it looked like he was okay. All right. Now there's 2 outs in the bottom of the 7th inning. The bottom line is, folks, the Mets have to get consistency. The Mets need consistency. I mean, in the 5th inning today, the Mets had a perfect opportunity loading the bases. Beatty gets on base. Torrens gets on base with a nice hit to right field. Nimmo, he walks. And then you have Lindor up. You have the heart of your lineup up. And we just score a measly one run. Lindor struck out. And I'm telling you, pitchers, you could just see the strategy of this game. Throwing up in the zone fastballs. Nimmo had trouble with the fastball up in the zone, and Lindor struck out. I mean, they're pounding Lindor high and tight up in the zone. He had trouble. He struck out in the 5th inning with the bases loaded. Not good. Marte luckily put enough bat on the ball to get a deep enough ball to center field. Tatis Jr. tried to make some type of hero play. He cuts off Jackson Merrill in center field, and he tried to throw out Beatty at the plate. Luckily, the throw was a little offline, and we scored our only run. But this game is not feeling good. Last night, a lot closer. Vientos with that grand slam, but the Mets were out hit by a long shot. I think last night the Padres had 14 hits to the Mets 6. So the New York Mets offensively right now are struggling, at least these past 2 games. But here's the deal. The thing why I think that this is a big deal is because who are you going to see in the playoffs? I mean, a team like the Padres, they're definitely good enough to stay in the race and definitely good enough to be there. So this is a matchup that I want to see the Mets excel in. And thus far right now, the Mets have not excelled. You had 2 hits. You had the Vientos grand slam, and you had the home run yesterday by Mauricio. Other than that, we've struggled to put up runs. The sac fly today by Marte. I mean, folks, we need more consistency. And the middle of the lineup, I know Soto got hurt, but Lindor's got to get it going. Alonso, he's been slumping as of late. Nimmo has been like really the only one in the last 2 months who has been really consistently hot. Even Soto, besides June, if you look at Soto, July, April, May, batting low 200s. So this lineup, again, I'm going to keep saying it. All right, now we're going to tail it in to what all the Mets going to do. A lot of people are rumoring that Luis Robert Jr. is a potential guy that the New York Mets are looking for. Now, who can the Mets give up? It's apparent that the White Sox have put it out there. They've put it out there that they want Mark Vientos. They want Mark Vientos in any trade involving Luis Robert Jr. Now, Luis Robert Jr. hasn't been, I would say, an upper-level major leaguer since 2023 when he came in 12th in the MVP race. I mean, he had a phenomenal year. But this year, he's batting 206. Last year, he had a mediocre year. So, I mean, you're trading for a guy that has had a lot of time in between being a very productive player. So, the Chicago White Sox, they want a very good asset from us in Mark Vientos. Now, there's been the debate in New York City the last couple of days. If you're a New York Mets fan, would you trade Mark Vientos or would you not trade Mark Vientos? Now, a lot of fans are, you're relating trading Mark Vientos with acquiring Luis Robert Jr. I'm a guy, I want to give Mark Vientos a chance to grow. I want to give Mark Vientos a chance with the New York Mets because I saw what he did last year in New York City under the bright lights. And you've seen in the last couple of days, I mean, this is the pressure's on, folks. This is the pressure right now. Mark Vientos knows he's under a lot of scrutiny. And in the last 7 games, the guy is batting over 300. He's getting that good approach where he's going to opposite field. He's going up the middle. So, he's a guy when the pressure is on, he doesn't wilt. That's a rare quality. And, rarely do I get a chance to listen to Evan and Tiki on WFAN. But, Tiki Barber, a former athlete, actually said, you know what? There are a lot of things to analyze in professional players. But one of the things that is most important is to analyze how a player plays when the pressure is at its highest during the playoffs. 2 outs, bottom of the 9th. When the team needs you the most, are you the type of player that comes through? Are you the type of player that wilts? And, Tiki Barber is like, you know what? Vientos is the type of player that can slow down his heartbeat, and he is the type of player that can come through. He's only 25 years old. The New York Mets have control over him over the next 4 years besides these next 2 months. Again, in the right package, I'm always willing to listen. David Stearns, I'm pretty sure, the same way. Good GMs, presidents, they're always willing to listen. But the facts are, is Luis Robert Jr. the right trade? If I'm the Chicago White Sox, yeah, of course I'm asking for Vientos. Folks, I don't know if you just saw this before me, but Manny Machado, unbelievable. Hits a bomb, 3-run bomb off of Chris Davinsky, 7-1 Padres. And, right about now, I'm just giving up on this game. I'm giving up on this game. This is so damn frustrating. This is really frustrating because, like I said, this isn't an opponent that you're going to see in the playoffs. This is an opponent that knocked us out of the playoffs a few years ago. I mean, the Padres, they're a good team. They got the best bullpen in all of baseball. They got great hitters. Chris Davinsky, who obviously he's trying to make a good impression. He's trying to do his best. He hangs a breaking ball right over the middle of the plate. And of course, Manny Machado, all-star, he's going to be able to hit that. Okay. Honestly, if I'm the Mets right now, Chris Davinsky is going right back down. And, He's only here because Brazoban, lollygag last night, and in that play where he had to cover first base, and that eventually led to the Mets giving up runs. And that I agree with. You can't have that in the middle of a pennant race. You can't have one of your relievers who's fighting for a job. You can't have him lollygagging the first base. So what they did to him, sending him down, and they kind of painted a picture like, oh, we're sending the guy down to extend the guy so that he could throw more innings. Well, you know what, folks? We can see the cause and the effect. I mean, the guy didn't hustle on the field. You sent him to the minor leagues. He's not an established veteran. He's a guy who's supposedly fighting for his job, and that can never, ever, ever happen. And the guy, his replacement, Chris Davinsky, is not doing any better right now. So you know what? The Mets right now are not looking good. Not looking good. All right. So back to the trade talk. Would we trade Mark Vientos at all? Would we trade him for Luis Robert Jr.? So I did a video the other day. I analyzed both sides. Luis Robert Jr., what he has after this season is he has 2 years, an option, really. So the team could pick up an option for next year. I believe it's for $20 million, and there's an option for the year after. So you can have it for 2 years after this. But, the facts are, if he's not batting any better than 210, 205, he's got a value as a center fielder. But again, is he worth giving up that chip? Because Mark Vientos, he's a chip. Whether you love him, hate him, think that he doesn't have high value because of his lack of defensive capabilities, the facts are you want to maximize that chip. You want to get the biggest return possible. And right now, although the Mets, Mark Vientos has had a good stretch in the last 7 games, you're still looking to deal Mark at his lowest value. So, that would be tough. That I would consider a good package for him, but still, right now, Luis Robert doesn't seem like the best return, in my opinion. Saint Vintage, Mark can go. Yeah, I've heard that the last couple of days. Mark can go. And, you're absolutely right. It is a crowded infield. Acuna, Brett Beatty, Mauricio, we've seen dynamic. And I think one of my first videos 3 years ago when I started this channel was about the potential of Ronnie Mauricio. So that's a guy that I love, and I've always loved him. I couldn't wait to see this guy's potential, and we're just starting to see the potential of Ronnie. So he's a guy I would never, at this point, I would not want to trade. Brett Beatty, he's a guy in the right package. Mark Vientos, he's a guy that I would trade in the right package. And again, a guy like Acuna, he's a guy that I would consider trading in the right package. Everybody's on the board as long as it's for the right package. You want to get better as a team after a trade. You don't want to be status quo. And obviously, you don't want to get worse. You want to improve your ball club. Saint Vintage, Beatty has a lower ceiling but higher floor than Mark. Beatty is safe to me. You know what? I think Beatty at second base, he could be a damn productive player. Even if you kind of forecast his numbers, for a 500 to 600 at bat season, you could see Beatty easily hitting between 20 to 25 home runs, batting 260, 270, and that, 20 to 25 home runs. Let's just say he's a second baseman. That's not bad production at all. That is not bad production. So, I could definitely see, Beatty being a little more desirable because he could play second base. He could play defense. But there's one facet about Mark that, you got to remember. If Pete Alonso decides to walk next year, I'm not going to assume, even though I myself would like Pete Alonso back, I don't know how the contract situation is going to work. I don't know how Scott Boras is going to take this season. Pete's kind of trailed off a bit in average. He's trailed off in production. So, we got to see what Scott Boras and Pete Alonso are looking for. But, I'm pretty sure they're going to be looking for over $100 million in several years, 3 to 4 year contract, maybe 5 years. Who the hell knows what Scott Boras is going to be thinking? But you want to have a backup option. Mark Vientos has always been that Pete Alonso insurance. So that's also another thing that, I'm considering, Mark at first base. I think, defensively, it's not going to be as hurtful as at third base. At third base, obviously, you got to have more range. You got to have that arm, that good, accurate arm. At first base, I think he is more viable. But then, obviously there's other people saying, well, you got Ryan Clifford down in the minor leagues in Double-A, and, he's mashing the ball. So I guess at that, if you're David Stearns, you have to see how do you project a guy like Ryan Clifford. Sorry, just kind of watching that. So middle of the 8th inning, McNeil makes the third out. And again, the New York Mets score no runs. And Madeline, very well said. Awful game. Tonight is an awful game. No one is hitting with runners in scoring position. Like I went over earlier, the top of the lineup right now is hopeless. Vientos has looked good today. I believe he has 1 or 2 hits. He should have 2 hits. He was robbed early on. Iglesias made a nice play going towards the third base line. But then Vientos did have a hit up the middle. He's looking pretty decent. But the rest of the lineup is pretty barren. Really not much there. Soto, again, went out in the middle of the game, hoping against hope that he is okay. Because, Soto, he's always been very consistent in terms of run producing. And think about this, folks. This is a game that, I miss Alvarez. Torrance has that 1 hit, but Alvarez is more explosive. So, it's tough. This is a tough game. Yep, that's fair. Beatty, seeing him being 265, 2075. Based on what he's doing this year, and he hasn't done anything great this year. His numbers kind of project to that, even on a bad year. This year in 250 at-bats, so that would project to about 500. If he's starting full-time, he's going to get between 600 and 650. But based on 250, so you times that by 2, he's got 11 home runs. So that projects to 22, and he's missing about 100 to 150. So 100 to 150 at-bats, that is. So you gave him 600 to 650 at-bats. Even the way he's producing this year, he would hit you around 25 to 30 home runs. So, and he's got 34 RBIs. His OPS plus is 101, so that's 1 point above league average. So, that's not that impressive. But you know what? Let me bring up his... Cunha makes a nice sliding, diving catch, playing him in center field. That's a nice grab. Like the Cunha play, who's ever watching the game right now, that's pretty nice ground that he covers. If you're a team looking at Acuna now, you see him playing the outfield, you see him playing center field, he could play shortstop, he could play second base. if you're a team out there, he's a speedster, so he might be raising his appeal, which could be good for people who actually want to get rid of him. All right, so this is Brett Beatty's Baseball Savant. All right, so this is what Beatty is doing well this year. A lot of blue here, a lot of blue. But what he does well is he's in the 82nd percentile in barrel percentage. He's in the 70th percentile in hard hit percentage and bat speed. Everybody these days are talking about bat speed, and what they do is equate. A lot of times, bat speed is equated with how many homers a guy can hit potentially. The higher the bat speed, the more a guy can hit, more home runs. They project it like that. And you have Beatty in the 90th percentile in bat speed. So that's not bad. Range-wise, fielding, you have Beatty in the 74th percentile in fielding. So those are some pretty important categories. There's a lot of other categories like walk rate, K rate, whiff rate. That's Beatty being more disciplined. But this is the ones that he's strong in is stuff you really can't teach. You can't teach hard hit percentage. You can't teach bat speed. Those are natural gifts. Now, you could teach Brett Beatty over time to get to be a bit more disciplined. You could teach him to cut down his strikeout rate. So, the things that he's good at are things that you really can't teach. Range. You can't really teach range, although you can teach angles and stuff like that. But, a guy who's got good range, that is something that, it's hard to teach that. Whoa, what's going on? Happy trade deadline. We got that coming up very, very soon. You're right. This team isn't a championship team. Well, you know what? You're 100% right. This team is not a championship team. This team right now is a good team. It's a good team. They've been fighting first place, second place with the Phillies throughout most of the year. They're just a good team right now. We have to figure out between now and October if this team can become a great team, right? Because David Stearns' teams are not finished in April. They're not finished in May. He develops these teams throughout the year. Right now, if you base how good this team is based on tonight's play, obviously they're getting kind of killed. 7-1, losing to the Padres, not feeling so good. Bullpen not looking good. Manaya, kind of shows you, it kind of shows you the problem all year. These pitchers obviously aren't going deep into games, and then you eventually got to turn it to the bullpen. Bullpen might give it up, might not, but at the end of the day, what puts the most pressure on the pitching staff? The offense. The lack of offense puts the most pressure on the pitching staff. You don't score, there's going to be more and more and more pressure. And even for the starting pitchers, the fact that we don't score runs for the starting pitchers, it just puts more strain on the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth innings, because these pitchers know that they have to be, I don't say perfect. It's not as bad as the DeGrom days, but that if you give up 3-4 runs, you could lose the game. Pete Alonso makes a nice diving stop. Pete's defense has been pretty good, pretty good. Bottom of the 8th inning is over. Mets walking off the field. I hate when we're losing. I hate when we're losing. Does Beatty's swing remind you of Olerud? Olerud was so calm, so patient at the plate. I mean, Olerud, the guy almost won the batting title one year, batted around 350. I mean, Olerud, I mean, the guy was a batting champ. The guy was. It's similar, but it's not quite. It's certainly not quite there. They're both obviously lefties. Olerud was special. He was a special player. The 2 years that he played in New York, I mean, that was great. That infield Ventura, Olerud, Ordonez. That was a very special. And obviously, I can't forget Alfonso. Alfonso's autograph right here. So obviously a very special infield there, but it's similar because they're lefties and they got a similar swing path, but not quite the same. No, I mean I hear what you're saying. The swing, it's similar, but not quite the same. Now it's like really funny. Like when you look at like a lot of the articles and you hear a lot of like insiders, like the last article I saw is the New York Mets have given up on rising star, willing to move him before deadline. And obviously that rising star is Mark Vientos. But you know what? According to what David Stearns has intimated and said, that is far from the truth. I know a lot of these writers, they have to make it as interesting as possible, but the Mets have nowhere near have given up on Mark Vientos. I mean, do they have him on the block? Yeah, you got to gauge his potential interest, but the Mets have not given up on Mark Vientos. I mean, we got to remember, and I know you got the lack of defense, but last year was really something special. Really something special, and hitting 5 home runs in the playoffs. I mean, for a rookie to do that, that is pretty rare. There we go. Vientos, another hit. I just like the fact that this guy knows he's on the trading block and he's still producing. He's still producing. All right, you know what? I want to check out Vientos's profile. We just saw Brett Beatty's profile. And then after I check out, we check out Mark Vientos, his profile. Then we'll check out Luis Robert Jr. Okay, so we got the percentile ranks for Mark Vientos this year. So obviously, Mark Vientos, his numbers are not impressive. 264 at bats, 7 home runs, 231 batting average, 283 on base, 371 slug, and the number that encompasses a couple different stats. You have 654 OPS. I mean, a guy like Vientos, you want to see an OPS of at least 800, at least. Last year in 450 at-bats, you had 27 home runs, 266 batting average, 516 slug. Anything over 500 is good. And over 800 OPS, his OPS was 838. So this year, percentile ranks that, red is something he does good. He's in the 77th 77th percentile in average exit velocity, which is how hard he hits the ball. And his hard hit percentage is in the 82nd percentile. So these two categories tells you that despite him not having a great year, he hits the ball hard. He hits the ball hard. We know that. We know that he has good power potential. His approach at the plate has been bad all year. Again, his approach the last handful of games has been much, much better. And you know what? I think that the guy might have been in a little slump. I say sophomore slump. Some people don't want to hear that. They don't like to hear sophomore slump. But I think that's very well what it could have been, a sophomore slump. Francisco Alvarez slumped all of last year, slumped the first 2 months of this season, went down, got a swing bat, and Francisco Alvarez has looked much, much better. Could Mark Vientos be in a similar state? Again, we would have to keep him and evaluate him more, but that would mean keeping him past the deadline. So, David Stearns is going to have a very good challenge in the next couple of days. Again, I'm going to say, do I want to keep him? Yes. Would I trade him? Yes, as well. It just has to be in the right package. And in the last 7 games, Mark Vientos is batting .375, folks. .375, 1 home run, 6 RBIs. In the last 15 games, he's batting .321. So his splits in the last 15 games have been much improved. Now, these are his 2024 rankings. You see a couple more red statistics, what he did better last year. Slugging-wise, he was in the 84th percentile. Average exit velocity, again, very good, 82nd percentile. Barrel percentage, 92nd. Hard hit percentage, 80th percentile. So the reason why I'm showing you this is last year he had a very good season, but he still failed in a couple categories. Did he walk a lot? No, he was more in the middle of the pack. He struck out a lot. He had a high whiff rate, not good there. Had a high chase rate. Square up rate, not in the best. Bat speed, 50th percentile. So this is what he struggled with last year. Pitchers learn. They get a profile on hitters. They know hitters' weaknesses, and they make adjustments. These first 2-3 months, I believe pitchers were able to make better adjustments than Mark Vientos in certain situations. Now it's his opportunity in the last couple of weeks to make adjustments, and I believe we're in the process of seeing that. Raise that value. That's funny. What's up, Hector? What do you think about bringing up Gilbert or Jet Williams if the Mets don't add a center fielder by Thursday? So they actually asked David Stearns this in a press conference a couple weeks ago. They asked him if he envisions bringing up any offensive prospects. So that meant Jet Williams, that meant Drew Gilbert. And his answer to that is he doesn't envision bringing up any prospects. But you're asking me if I would bring up any of these guys if obviously we don't make any trades. Now, the fact of the matter is, we're still going to have the guys that we have. We're still going to have McNeil, and we're probably still going to have that log jam in the infield. And now you have Acuna, you see him playing center field. So just by the mere fact that you're still going to have, these guys, if Brett Beatty goes in a slump, if, Mark Vientos, after the trade deadline, if he starts stinking, that's the only way that we would start turning to our prospects. You don't want the success of the second half to hinge on players who haven't played in the MLB. That's not the time to develop players during a pennant race. If you're forced to do that, you'd have no choice. But I don't think it would be an optimum. I don't think it would be an optimum answer. Wow. Well, Will, come on. Talk about prisoner of the moment. Padres, yeah, they've been looking good these last couple games, but you know what? I wouldn't really assess that they're going to be in the World Series. But I will say this. The Padres have always been a team that I've always respected, especially since 2022. They've always been very, very aggressive, trading a lot of their top-tier talent, acquiring talent. When something doesn't work, they're not afraid to make big, bold moves. They've been, developing Jackson Merrill, bring him up, doing well. They got a great pitching staff, a great bullpen coach, a great pitching coach. So they are a really good team to reckon with. But, the Mets are not a finished product. So that's what I got to say. David Stearns' teams are not finished products. Last year, where were we in mid-July? I believe July 8th was when the first time we were in over 500 in a long time. Or the last time. So we started becoming an over 500 team after July 8th. So by the trade deadline last year, we had a lot of work to do. In fact, after the trade deadline, we struggled a bit. That series with the Angels, we had a lot of work to do. We were still 5, 6, 7 games out of the wild card at the end of August. The Mets right now, they are sitting around first place, whether they're half game out or they're one full game in first place. They are around the division lead right now. And, they have a better situation. They have Senga healthy. They have a starting rotation that's healthy. Now the starting rotation, I believe, needs a lot of help because although they are healthy, there's a lot of limitations on the starting rotation. I said this in my video the other day. We're going to need another starter. You got Clay Holmes already doubling his career high in innings pitched, doubling it. So if he eventually gets tired in late August, would we be surprised? No, he is in uncharted territory. David Peterson, his career high in innings is around 120. He's already at that point. So if he gets tired, would we be surprised? No. Kodai Senga pitched 5 innings last year. You're going to ask him to pitch near his career high, especially if we make a long postseason run. Then you got guys who are supposed to take pressure off the pitching staff, Tyler McGill, Paul Blackburn. They've been fighting injuries. So you certainly need another starter. Could you go to some of the top prospects? That's also another option. But I think if you assess that this is a World Series team, you have to get that legit insurance. We got our best starting pitcher last year was Paul Blackburn. That was our best starting pitcher. We got a number 6 starting pitcher to help us in the stretch run when we knew Kodai Senga was already hurt. So we made that move after Kodai Senga was hurt, and that was the best we did. David Stearns this year has a different assessment of this team. He assesses where this team can go, and I believe the ceiling is much higher. He knows the field is open. Where are the dominant teams? You have a couple really good teams, the Cubs, the Padres, the Dodgers, the Brewers, they're all like sitting right where the Mets are, right around the record the Mets are. And they have all these teams have different strengths and weaknesses. Is there one dominant team out of that bunch? Who is the dominant team? I don't think there is a dominant team. So I think that David Stearns knows that there's no dominant team out there. If he threads the needle, if he makes the right moves at this deadline to improve our ceiling, that could be all the difference. That could be all the difference. Last year, we didn't do it. We didn't improve our ceiling at the deadline, in my opinion. Did we get a couple more innings out of, a guy like Paul Blackburn and a couple of the other moves we made? Yeah, we did. A little more flexibility, but I don't think that we drastically improved our ceiling based on the moves from last year. We improved our ceiling because our players, everybody stepped up. In fact, our pitchers kind of took it to another level at the end of last year. If we remember, Sean Manaea the last couple of months was dominant. Luis Severino pitched really good. Even Jose Quintana, I remember his last 5 or 6 starts. They were phenomenal. They were the best starts of his season last year. So our pitchers got hot at the right time. We had clutch hitting, but when we had to play a team in the Dodgers that were clearly more talented than us, we didn't have enough offense and we didn't have enough pitching. We allowed 8 runs a game in the NLCS. Not good enough from a pitching standpoint, and offensively, not good enough as well. What's up, Juan? I mean, you know what? Budo's a guy that I always expect more from. I always, and I've backed him up so much. And, I've heard it from a lot of people. A lot of people have made this assessment about Budo not being good enough, shouldn't putting Budo in the circle of trust. You have a certain amount of guys that you trust in big situations. And Budo just time and time again has, in my opinion, showed regression. From the end of last year to spots in this year, really kind of showed regression. And, you really can't rely on him. You're 100% right. You cannot rely on this guy. Game for war. Stearns knows nothing. That's a bit of an aggressive statement. The right move was firing these 2 crap hitting coaches in May, June 2024 when they couldn't hit. This year, the same. Well, you know what? If it's just as easy as firing the hitting coaches, that's always an option down the stretch. But I wouldn't say that Stearns knows nothing. I mean, the guy in his first year took a team the year before that who failed to make the playoffs, and where they won 77 games in 2023, looked crappy, embarrassing, took that team to 2 games short of the World Series. I know there was some luck involved. There was clutch hitting involved in the end of the year. But you know what? I got to give Stearns a bit more credit than knowing nothing. All right. So the next assessment I just want to look up is Luis Robert Jr. Let's pull up his profile. Sorry about that. That wasn't working out. All right. So Luis Robert Jr. this year has had almost 300 at bats. So, okay. So he's played He's played in almost every game this year. In 300 at-bats, he has 11 home runs, 43 RBIs. He has 60 hits, batting average 205, on base 292, slug 348, OPS 640. I mean, offensively, this is beyond, beyond bad. I mean, his OPS plus is 79. 79. That is minus 21 below an average hitter. That is bad. I mean, batting average 205, bottom of the league. On base 292, bottom of the league. Slug 348, bottom of the league. OPS 640, bottom of the league. So, I mean, right now we're looking at, if we trade for him, we're looking at the guy's potential, and we're looking at his defensive capabilities. He's a former Gold Glove, and obviously a couple years ago, that potential comes from the fact that, he was 12th in MVP. He won the Silver Slugger Award, and he was phenomenal. He was lights out as a 25-year-old, one of the bright spots in the league. 38 home runs, 80 RBIs, 264 batting average, 315 on base, 542 slug, 857 OPS, 130 OPS plus, and his wins above replacement, his WAR was 5.3. So, I mean, that's the potential there. That is the potential. So the ceiling on Luis Robert Jr. is you got a Gold Glove center fielder who's only 27 years old. So that's 2 years more than Mark Vientos, right? So he's actually 2 years and 4 months older than Mark Vientos. So, I mean, not a huge age gap, right? And you got a guy who is proven defensively, and you got a guy who has been in the MVP race about 2 years ago, who hit very, very, very on a high level 2 years ago. But the fact of the matter is, the last 2 seasons, you saw such a drastic drop-off offensively. The Chicago White Sox, they want to get max value. They want you to trade for Luis Robert Jr. and give value like he's played in 2023. But, that's where a guy like David Stearns has to be smart. Like, I don't think Vientos is a match, but that's not to say that I wouldn't go after Luis Robert Jr. I just don't think that is equivalent value. I think Vientos' value, even though he's been struggling this year, his value with 4 years left of control, with the potential that he has, and, just a 2.5 month slump, not a 2-year slump, a 2.5 month slump, I think his value is much higher still than Luis Robert Jr. So if you want to do a package around an Acuna, a Drew Gilbert, a Blade Tidwell, a couple mid-level prospects that the Chicago White Sox like, that's a trade that, I think would be more fair. I'm not trading for a guy's potential of a couple years ago. I'm just not. That's not what teams do. They don't trade for a guy years later hoping that he's going to be the player that he was years and years ago. I mean, Sandy Alcantara is going to be the pitching guy. I think that's why Sandy Alcantara hasn't been moved yet. I mean, the Marlins are looking for value, equivalent of Sandy from years ago. And I know Sandy Alcantara had one good start. Oh, I'm sorry. He had one more start. He pitched yesterday, and he did pretty good. So on 729, he went 5 innings. He allowed 0 runs, 3 hits. Start before that, he allowed no runs, 7 innings, 4 hits. But the starts before that, the last 15 games haven't been good. 4-6, 5.75 ERA. I mean, as a whole right now, he's 6-9 with a 6.36. He's still firing it in at 100 miles per hour. So, that's a guy that I'm more intrigued. I'm always more intrigued with pitchers, especially pitchers coming off of an injury. Sandy Alcantara, I could see him I'm more interested in a guy like that because you can explain a guy's slow start coming off an injury. And if you can see that the guy's tools are still there, Sandy Alcantara still has, he's still got all his pitches. He's still got the tools. It's not like he's trailed off 3 or 4 miles per hour on his fastball. That's a guy I'd be more interested in. And he's got 2.5 years left on his contract. In fact, let me see if I can bring up his baseball savant. Okay, so this is Sandy Alcantara's baseball savant for this year. Obviously, we see a lot of blue, but his numbers aren't great. So expected ERA, in fact, actually, his numbers expected ERA are lower than his actual ERA. 6.36 ERA, and his expected ERA is 5. So that's actually shown you that he's actually had some tough luck. So that's actually, a helpful stat. This is not good. Expecting batting average, 285. Not good. But if I go down location, okay, his location, 44th percentile, so that's not that great. So obviously, if you get yourself into bad situations and you're not locating, he's a guy traditionally who has had a higher K rate. His K rate is down, so not locating, coming back from an injury. I mean, there are, explanations for why, he's had a very tough time. His fastball velo is in the 91st percentile, folks. He's still throwing it at 97.3 miles per hour, 97.3 in 2022 when he was lights out. And as if you could see this, it's all red. In 2022, he was throwing the ball at 97.9. So he's virtually throwing the fastball at the same velocity, not having anywhere near the same results, but he's got the same fastball. So that's actually that's a decent sign. That is a decent sign there. Average exit velocity, they're hitting the ball hard off him, but if he's not locating the ball and he's getting himself in bad situations, that's going to happen. Ground ball rate, 71st percentile. That's a pretty good thing. They like, the Mets being David Stearns, they like guys who can generate double plays. He's got a sinker he uses 24% of the time, and that's good. The Mets have always looked at their infield. That's why they want to upgrade at third base from Vientos to Mauricio to whoever they potentially want to get in the future. They want to have a good infield defense, and if you generate ground balls, which Sandy Alcantara does, that's going to be a huge benefit. Now, again, you see all this blue in here, and it's really no surprise. He's been struggling the entire year, struggling mightily. And if you go back to all this season, expected batting average, so the hitter's expected batting average off of Alcantara, I mean, it's 2023 wasn't the best. That was 265. But, if you go back a couple years ago, 215, 232, 243, 244, 215, and then there was limited sample size in 2017. So, hitters are getting a lot better contact against Sandy, and obviously if you make more contact and you hit the ball hard, that's going to lead to more runs scored. But the good thing is Sandy Alcantara, last 2 games, has looked much, much, much better. Much better. And, if you ask me, that's a guy I would go after way above a guy like Luis Robert Jr. Hector, Robert stinks. I'll say it. You know, the thing is, it's really tough. You know, when you're 25 and you come in close to the top 10 in MVP, and you're a Gold Glover, and you show you're the complete package. You know, and in the next 2 years, you just aren't that player. People are always going to look back at what you did, and they're always going to make excuses. All right, we saw what this guy can do if he puts it all together. Like, why does a guy? It's not like he got old. You know, I'm not familiar with his injury situation, if he suffered any catastrophic injuries. I haven't heard that as an excuse. But you know, how do you explain a guy going from an MVP caliber offensive and defensive player to being 23 points below the league average? It's such a drastic change. It's not like he went from excellent to good. He went from excellent offensively to bad. And game, you know, this is 100% right. I mean, you wanna assess the whole package. You want to assess the whole package. Most likely, the New York Mets next year, and next year is going to be a year before the lockout. They're going to be over the third luxury tax, so we're going to be over the Steve Cohen tax, right? So we're going to pay max tax value on this guy. So if you're paying him $20 million, and that's way more than you're paying a guy like Mark Vientos, you double that. So is a guy like this worth paying $40 million? Is he worth playing close to $40 million? Because, you know, I'm assuming we're going to be over that third luxury tax. Now, even at $20 million, that's not high value. That's not the correct assessment for how he's playing. I mean, you know, you think of, you know, defensively. Let me give you a good example. So the Mets gave Jose Siri, a defensive center fielder, $2 million because he plays Gold Glove potential center field, right? So if Luis Robert Jr. is only known because he has a potential Gold Glove in center field, why am I going to pay him $20 million when I can get a potential Gold Glove guy like a Jose Siri? You know, obviously he's injured in that, but, you know, that's just an example. A guy who plays that elite center field, we paid $2 million this year, and obviously the $20 million is not warranted right now. You know, the thing is, if I look at Luis Robert Jr. and you look at him before, and I've been trying to analyze this the last couple of days. So you look at him at his age 22, 23, 24, and 25-year-old season. His 25-year-old season in 2023, that's when he went off. That's when he went off. And he was a 5.3 wins above replacement. But in limited sample size in 2021 and 2022, he was productive. In 2021, he had a 3.7 WAR in 300 at-bats. 3.7 WAR in 300 at-bats, and a little less productive in 2022. But in those 2 to 3 years leading up to his MVP season, he was a productive bat. He was a productive bat. In 2021, 13 home runs, 43 RBIs, batted .338. In 2022, 12 home runs, 56 RBIs, batted .284. I mean, in 2021, he was 154 OPS plus, then 110, then 130. So, you know, yeah, you could say he's a fluke, but he was really an above average hitter for the first 3 to 4 years of his career. So, I mean, like, really, what happened? I haven't followed this guy. I don't watch Chicago White Sox baseball. I wish, did the guy like get hit by a pitch? Like, I don't know. Did he change his mechanics? It just seems like there's got to be a better explanation than he was a fluke for his first 4 years in the MLB. And also, like, it's not like the guy got old. He turns 26 years old and Father Time hits him. I don't know. That doesn't really seem like the answer. Now, I mean, the perfect guy, and I'm just going to bring up a couple more things momentarily, but the perfect guy that the Mets, and I had this before. I mean, everybody probably, this is obvious now to say, but a guy like Bellinger would have been perfect, 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 perfect. I mean, that was the guy I wanted in December. Um, you know, Obviously we didn't go in that direction. We went the Jose Siri direction, but it was so blatantly obvious. It was so blatantly obvious. And also, too, you know, it kind of tells me like how the Mets really changed their perception of a guy maybe like Drew Gilbert. Because you sign a guy like Jose Siri and you're like, okay, he doesn't have that great of an offensive ceiling. And you pass on a guy like Bellinger and you know that Tyrone Taylor is more of a fourth outfielder. Like it seems like there was something missing. Did you expect Nimmo to go out there and play center and maybe you go out and get a left fielder? I mean, I don't think that was you're moving Nimmo away from center field. So that couldn't have been it. I think the thing was that the Mets have been disappointed in a guy like Drew Gilbert. I mean, that's really the only reasoning I could think of because right now the Mets know they need increased production at center field, but they're almost in a similar spot, that the team is in right now that they started off the season. So unless they thought Tyrone Taylor would have been more productive, or obviously Jose Siri, if he would have been more productive, but the Mets definitely need an upgrade. They need an upgrade. I mean, you could see that offensively challenged, and defensively, you need elite defense up the middle. You need elite defense up the middle. So Sean Manaea right now, 86 pitches thrown today. That was a season high for Sean Manaea, so stretching him out a bit. I mean, a game like this, which the Mets lose 7-1 and now they're on a 2-game losing streak. I mean, the little things you can take out of this is, you stretch Sean Manaea out a bit. He only allowed one earned run. So, I mean, he didn't do that bad of a job. You also had Mark Vientos look good. Mark Vientos should have had 3 hits. He ended up with 2 hits today. Then, after that, there's really not too much to hold your head up about. I mean, we got to see how bad the injury is with Juan Soto. I mean, hopefully it's a bone bruise. The way he was putting pressure on his foot kind of showed that. I'd be surprised if anything was broken. Obviously, you can't tell from watching TV. But Francisco Lindor, if you had to have like a GOAT of the game, Francisco Lindor striking out 3 times, striking out with the bases loaded, no outs. I mean, Francisco Lindor, especially after Juan Soto left this game, extremely disappointing. Pete Alonso, another big bat, didn't get any hits in this game, had 1 base on ball. So, I mean, the lineup really left a lot to be desired. I'll say that. And the Padres, I didn't realize they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We scored 1 run, right? And the Padres used 6 pitchers. Wow. I'm just, the team. I'm impressed with the Padres. I really am. I mean, like I said, they're always able to develop their prospects. They're not afraid to be aggressive when they need to. I mean, they're dealing with all this stuff in the offseason, Peter Seidler's death and fighting with the family, potentially cutting payroll. Still, they go out there, after trading Juan Soto, they get a really decent return. They make a couple aggressive trades, Dylan Cease. Now, I admire an organization that is not afraid to pull the trigger. The Mets in the last 2 years, since getting David Stearns, I'll say this. David Stearns, he's been very calculated, but he hasn't really been aggressive enough for my liking. He really hasn't. In fact, the most aggressive move he's made, in my opinion, the most aggressive move that David Stearns has made in his tenure is getting Gregory Soto a week before the deadline in a time where there's not many sellers, not a lot of options, not a lot of lefty options, especially a fireballer like Soto. For you, a week before the deadline, getting that, securing that need, I was so happy last week. I was so happy on Friday, and I thought David Stearns, all right, great approach. What's the next move? Now, obviously the deadline is not over. We have time between now and the deadline, but David Stearns has a lot to do. And if anybody's upset by these last 2 games, first of all, they're only 2 games. And second of all, it gives the New York Mets an opportunity to assess their weaknesses. We know this already. They're very inconsistent offensively, right? So where are the places you can upgrade? Today's game, you had Torrens behind the plate. We already know catcher. That's not going to change. You have Alvarez there. First base, not going to change. You have Alonso there. Shortstop, not going to change. You have Lindor there. Potential upgrade positions, second base, Brandon Lowe. He was rumored a lot in the last 2 days. And I saw a couple of baseball writers say that this was a really hot and heavy rumor. Brandon Lowe of the Tampa Bay Rays. He's been a very solid stick for the Rays for the last couple of years. He's a 2-time All-Star. This year, 19 home runs, 50 RBIs, 269 batting average, 320 on base, 800 OPS. So again, I say, these good hitters at least should have an 800 OPS. And his situation is this year he's making $10.5 million, and there's a team option for next year, $11.5 million team option. So nothing crazy for that team option. He's a guy, he's finished in the top 10 of MVP 2 times. He plays multiple positions, plays mostly second base, bats left, throws right. He can also play outfield. I mean, he's an intriguing guy for me. He certainly is an intriguing guy. Is that a guy where we kind of go to upgrade a second base and then you leave the center field position as is with McNeil rotating with Tyrone Taylor, and that's a way you upgrade your offense and you provide insurance for that lineup? I know you got Jesse Winker coming back, but Jesse Winker, in my opinion, is not enough of an upgrade. Jesse Winker, I always liked him for his clubhouse presence, and I knew he was a solid bat at the plate, a very professional bat. But, Brandon Lowe, is that going to be the upgrade? And, I forgot, there were a couple, I think multiple baseball writers. I don't know if it was Jim Bowden, but multiple baseball writers mentioned him today. One of the writers I saw, Joel Sherman of the Post, he mentioned that the Mets have shown interest in infielder Brandon Lowe. The Rays, falling out of contention, have lost 17 of the last 25 games and now sit 2.5 games behind the final wild card spot. Wouldn't be surprised if they decide to make that type of move. And a team like the Rays, just because of their financial situation, I'm never surprised when they deal off talent because they have these financial issues that no other team does. And if you if you really unpack the Rays financial issues, it is a mess. Obviously, they have no place to play. The team may move to another part of the state. So that is a team that I could see kind of dealing off. I wouldn't be surprised whoever they deal off. So if the Mets decide to do business with the Tampa Bay Rays, Brandon Lau is a very interesting option. And, I think it would certainly be an upgrade at second base. It would certainly give us another professional bat and, all-star at second base. And then, you do your Tyrone Taylor, you do your McNeil thing. And then, too, I guess it would depend on who you trade. I don't know if you would give up. The Rays probably going to want guys who have prospect or guys who have a lot of years left. They don't want guys who are making money. And then maybe if you don't trade an Acuna, you don't trade a Beatty, maybe those two guys you can get your pitcher with. So let's see what Stearns needs to do. I think you need a starting pitcher, you need an upgrade in the lineup, and you need another reliever. Let's see if we get all those three. All right. Okay, so the press twins, you're getting Bader from let me ask this question. Who wants Harrison Bader? Who wants Harrison Bader? Obviously, Harrison Bader was with the New York Mets. But in my opinion, that would be extremely underwhelming. Extremely underwhelming. But the Mets apparently there have been reports out there that the Mets have been looking at Harrison Bader this year. Bader's just want to get you his numbers. His WAR is 2.4 this year, 12 home runs, 38 RBIs, 250 batting average, 337 on base, 439 slug, 776 OPS. So he's 12 home runs, 38 RBIs. When he was with us last year, he had 12 home runs, 51 RBI. So he's already matched his yearly total home run total last year. And, he's a good glove out there. He's a good glove. He's a good presence in the clubhouse. If you're going to get him if you're going to upgrade your second baseman, if you're going to get a Brandon Lau and you're going to get a Harrison Bader, I'm just not really sure how much better Harrison Bader is than Tyrone Taylor. Like last year when those two were playing, I wanted to see Tyrone Taylor in the lineup at certain points than Harrison Bader. So I know Harrison Bader is having a better offensive season thus far, but in terms of ceiling, I'm not sure Bader's ceiling is that much higher than Tyrone Taylor. And I know Taylor's struggled mightily. So the rumor is Mets and the Yankees are eyeing Harrison Bader. So Bader's drawing interest from the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Yankees. And he's playing on a 1-year, $6.25 million contract with the Twins. I don't know. That doesn't excite me. Dominant. I believe it will be Yankees, Dodgers, World Series. So a rematch of last year. Not going out too far on a limb there, but that's a possibility. Julio, you're right. This offense makes you crazy. It's the same thing all year. Stearns has to do something about it. We can win the whole thing if he makes the right moves. Go Mets. You know what? I obviously you're 100% right. The offense is missing something. We're certainly missing something. I mean, I'll tell you one thing I don't like. I don't like. Last year Iglesias, he was a big glue piece. He was a big glue piece. He was a guy, a lot of charisma. A lot of guys, followed him. He brought a lot of energy to the team. I think that was very, very important. We're missing that type of component, that type of energy component. We're just taking these, bad at bats, and one inning turns into another. I mean, like I in my scorecard, I keep writing quick inning, top of the third inning, quick inning. I mean, there's just not much there. We're just not putting hits together. We're not. We're really not putting hits together. And I don't like also Iglesias. Vientos makes out. I think it was like the 8th inning. Vientos makes out, goes over to Iglesias and like kind of puts his hand on his back, and they're kind of like, they pass by and smile at each other. I don't know what the hell you're doing. You're losing the game by a lot. That kind of stuff I don't like. But I do like the component when he was on our team. We just don't have it. We don't have it. I want the team to look like they're having fun. They look like they were having fun last year. After that concert that Iglesias put on, the Mets went on a roll. They went on a roll. Lindor's got his head down, striking out 3 times. I don't know what's going on with him. He struggled mightily in the last 2 months. I know he hurt his wrist. I don't know if that's still bothering him. Nimmo, kind of the only one in the last 2 months who has really shown that energy, that consistent energy. That's why I like the young kids. That's why I want to see Mark Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio, Francisco Alvarez. Francisco Alvarez looks like he has that fire and desire in his eyes the last couple of days. I like what he said when he came up. I don't ever want to go back to the minor league, but I just hope that this New York Mets can develop that killer mentality that they started to develop last season. I'm not seeing it yet. And, fraternizing with the other teams right now, I mean, what do you do? I mean, really, what are you doing? Really, what are you doing? All right, so we have our kind of potential upgrades. We spoke about Luis Robert Jr., Brandon Lau, and Harrison Bader. Okay, so out of those first 3, the only guy that I'm a bit intrigued about is Brandon Lau. Unless you're going to give me Luis Robert Jr. for a bag of balls, which I don't think they're going to do. And then even if you give it to me, give him to us for a bag of balls, then we got to worry about paying him $20 million next year if we want to still kind of work with him. Obviously, we could let him go. There was actually a pretty good article I'm going to share with you. Tim Britton and Will Salmon, they actually assess what their biggest needs would be. So they asked each other a series of questions. So the first question they asked, is there a scenario where an out of the blue blockbuster trade happens before the deadline involving the Mets? So that was the first question. So a trade nobody's thinking of, blockbuster trade that the Mets could possibly do. So Tim Britton, he says, is there a scenario? Sure. A likely one? No. For something like that to happen, you probably need either a player we don't think of as being available, or a team wanting to unload a big salary. So he says that Zach Greinke going from Arizona to Houston in 2019 is an example of both. So he goes on to say, who fits? Maybe the Washington Nationals are more willing to move a Mackenzie Gore than is publicly known. And Stearns thinks that Gore is as good as Garrett Crochet and makes Washington that type of prospect offer. Or San Francisco decides to give up on Robbie Ray. Who fits B in terms of a team wanting to give up a big salary? Maybe a Carlos Correa, though it's hard to see the Mets having legit interest in him at this point. Okay. So, I mean, blockbuster trade that we're not thinking of, according to Tim Britton, obviously unlikely. And I think at this point, a lot of sellers right now, and in terms of who they want to trade, the trade block is mostly known, because the fact of the matter is there are more buyers in the market than sellers. So, if you're a seller and you have a guy that you're willing to trade, why the hell would you not make that known? You want to see what the value of said player is on the market. You want to see what 10 teams would want to give me for said player. You're not going to hold that player in your pocket and say it's a secret. That would make no sense. And I don't think Washington Nationals would want to give up on a Mackenzie Gore right now. Okay, so next question. Where do the Mets have room to trade for a starting pitcher? I understand that the current rotation perhaps lacks a shutdown ace to lean on in October. However, I also find it hard to believe Stearns would have an about face just 6 months after bringing in Clay Holmes, Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas for a combined $147 million. Would someone shift to the bullpen? I see the Mets potentially in the market for starting pitching. Doesn't make sense. So this was a question posed. I mean, honestly, this is such a silly question, because we already know that a guy like Clay Holmes is well past his innings limit. And then we know that Kodai Senga only pitched 5 innings. And we know that David Peterson is over his innings limit. And then you're ramping up Sean Manaea. You're ramping up Montas. But let's see. Will Salmon writes, everything I wrote last week remains true. They're opening to dealing for infield depth, hence Brandon Lau. They're prioritizing the bullpen. They'd trade for a starter if it was someone who they could see starting a playoff game for them. However, they won't be in the market for a depth mid back of the rotation guy, because they don't think they need one. They have Paul Blackburn. They have Tyler McGill. They have Brandon Sproat. They have Nolan McLean. They have options in the minor league. So, I mean, that is very well said. I mean, if you're going to upgrade your starting pitching, you're not going to upgrade another 6-7 starter when you have a slew of those and you have very little top of the rotation guys that, can go deep in October. Kodai Senga and David Peterson, we know that they may hit a wall. I'm just going to be honest. When you have a certain amount of pitching innings that you're going to go past, you put yourself in uncharted territory. I want to make sure, and I'm pretty sure Stearns wants to make sure this team is ready to deal with all scenarios and learns from last year when we only acquired a Paul Blackburn. And maybe acquiring a Jack Flaherty and blocking Flaherty for going to the Dodgers, maybe that helps our chances out, especially, the fact that Senga never came back. Okay, now here's a question involving Luis Robert Jr. So the question is, do you think the Mets are zeroing in on Luis Robert Jr. as their center field upgrade? Is it either a big smokescreen or he seems like the only viable target? So this is the answer from Will Salmon. He goes, they're definitely in the mix for Robert. I am not sure about zeroing in quite yet. I see it as someone of interest, but the ask from the White Sox is high right now. Other teams see it that way at least. And the White Sox have already said they are not valuing Luis Robert on his current production. They are valuing Luis Robert on his potential, which I think is silly. Silly. I mean, it's not like you're talking about a 22-year-old prospect that has no major league experience and you're evaluating what could be. You've seen in the last 2 years what Luis Robert currently is. All right, so Tim Britton, he writes about Robert. Robert is the guy who best fits what the Mets are looking for. He can handle the position defensively and provide offensive value, especially against left-handed pitching. His recent track record presents the risk that he isn't much of an upgrade over Tyrone Taylor. And that's what I've been saying for days. And Jeff McNeil ends up in center field a fair amount. However, if the offense is anything close to league average, that's a significant upgrade. Well, the fact of the matter is, okay, if Luis Robert Jr. has league average production and Gold Glove center field, that's a different story. But we already said that Luis Robert Jr.'s OPS plus is 77. That's 23 points below league average. You're not even talking about close to a league average hitter. Now, here's another option, another player. What do you think about pitcher Shane Bieber as an upgrade? Some of these questions. All right. So Tim Britton writes, that would require a leap of faith that Bieber can hit the ground running in his return from surgery, unlike Alcantara. His stuff is as good as it was just before he went down, when it looked like he'd reversed some of the decline he experienced in 2023. So you're leaning big time on your scouts watching Bieber's rehab starts. Folks, I mean, I don't need a project right now. I don't need a project. I mean, like Will Salmon said, the Mets are looking for a guy who can make a top of the rotation postseason start. Okay, now this is an interesting one. Have teams called about Blade Tidwell? It feels like he could be a nice fit for a team and help acquire a major league talent back. And why hasn't he been called up and converted to a reliever if they like his stuff so much? So Brayton writes, he goes, if the Mets don't acquire another reliever, I'd expect Tidwell to be shifted to the bullpen soon. They didn't want to do it before the deadline in case he wasn't needed as a relief option. So that's actually pretty good to know. I mean, we're trying to figure out, all right, we got Gregory Soto. He's our fireballing lefty. You put him with Brooks Raley. You got two different types of lefty complementing themselves. God forbid, what if we don't get another righty? Or what if we don't get possibly two righties? How some of us Mets fans are hoping of a pie in the sky. But it's good to know that potentially the Mets could use a Tidwell out of the bullpen. All right, this is one of Mets reportedly the front runner for Luis Robert Jr. amid MLB trade rumors. So this came out last night. Per MLB's Mark Feinstein, the New York Mets are among several teams keying an eye on Robert. Feinstein later added that the Mets have been one of the more aggressive teams in their pursuit of Robert, with one source taking it to another level, calling the New York Mets the frontrunners. Additionally, the Phillies, the Padres are among teams interested in the outfielder, according to Mark Feinstein. And then they go on and talk about the performance. It's Buster Olney over the weekend noted that Robert was unlikely to be traded. And mentioned that the center fielders and center field is we need a legit upgrade because the center field production for the Mets it has been horrible. In 402 plate appearances, the Mets center fielders have a collective batting average of 216, 286 on base, 322 slug, 4 homers. So in center field, and you go, with the New York Mets, you go back to the days of Beltran, like the center fielders we had years and years ago. I mean, it is beyond bad. Even when you had Conforto in center field years ago, I mean, this is probably one of our worst years production wise in center field. In the past, you had Nimmo in center field. So I got to say, this is one of our most offensively challenged years in center field. So the Mets, without a doubt, know that you need an upgrade in center field. You need an upgrade in center field. So that's why I got to believe you got to get your center fielder. You got to get another starter. And you got to get a reliever. But it's good to know that based on Will Sammons and Tim Britton, those Will Sammons very plugged in, it's good to know that, his inside knowledge is that the Mets will take guys like Blake Tidwell and put them in the bullpen. That is what the approach David Stearns used in Milwaukee. All of his top guys, all of his top pitching prospects, even though they were starters, a lot of guys were brought into the bullpen. So could we see a Nolan McLean in the bullpen? Could you see a Sproat in the bullpen? According to Will Salmon, yes. If the New York Mets do not and are unsuccessful in getting a reliever, I believe you 100% could see a Sproat in the bullpen. So that is pretty interesting, and that's another food for thought. I mean, at this point right now, deals should be coming through. Should be coming through. Well, a little over a day left. Deals should be coming through. All right, so I mean, it looks like that's the latest news. I'm checking, I'm updating X, updating a couple other places. It looks like the Luis Robert Jr. news is the Mets are heavily interested in Luis Robert Jr. The thing that has been holding up that deal has been the very, very high price, and again, the rumor has been is that the Chicago White Sox are not valuing him as what he's doing and not valuing his current on-field production as what he is as a player. So they are valuing his potential. And I think that is silly. That is really silly. But, if that's the case, David Stearns has to go to work. You have to put a package together that doesn't hamper your team this year. Like, I believe if you're going to trade away a Vientos, there's a huge trade-off there. I believe Vientos will have a better offensive production. He will be better offensively the second half of the year than Luis Robert Jr. So if you just look at the defensive component, then I'll look at how much better defensively is Luis Robert Jr. than a guy like Tyrone Taylor. Probably a little better, but if he's going to be a downgrade offensively in this lineup and be a little better defensively than Tyrone Taylor, I mean, it's really not worth me giving up a guy like Mark Vientos. Let's see if they put a package around another, player. If you want to put a package around an Acuna, a Drew Gilbert. I mean, Drew Gilbert, they really position him so different. I think Drew Gilbert was one of the chips that Stearns would want to trade. They didn't bring this kid up. They're not touting Kim at all in terms of, we're going to bring him up in September. So that's a little kind of questionable. But the thing is, you don't want to bring a kid up and have him struggle at the majors and then put him on the trade block. I mean, that's, teams are going to be like, he's failing at the major leagues. So it could be because that's one of the top prospects that they want to deal. Now, I mean, this deadline is super, super important because of the fact that I think all eyes on David Stearns. All eyes on David Stearns. Steve Cohen, in the beginning of this year, did everything he could. Gave the guys the keys. Gave David Stearns the keys to the castle. Huge payroll. Got him Soto on this team. Got Pete Alonso on this team. I mean, think of that. Pete Alonso not in this lineup. God forbid we didn't get Soto. I mean, what the hell would the offense be without those two guys? I mean, really, what the hell would the lineup be? I mean, we could have pivoted another way, but unless, I mean, maybe we would have went the Bellinger route, but, who the hell knows? I think it would have been well too late. Pete Alonso, we obviously got later in the offseason, but this is make or break time. This is make or break time for a guy like David Stearns. Now, if you look at his history with the Brewers, he didn't make his big moves like Christian Yelich. I think it was about 2 years after he started after he was GM of the team, right? So, he did his evaluation last year with the Mets. He evaluated that the Mets didn't have a high ceiling at the deadline. Thus, he didn't make any aggressive moves. This deadline's a bit different. I mean, the Mets' aspiration in everybody's opinion, it's just not my opinion. It's not some of the opinions of the folks in here. And again, thank you everybody for being with me 1:30 in the morning. I appreciate that. I really do. I know you could be doing something else. I do appreciate you guys staying here. But the fact of the matter is, it's really put up or shut up. He's got all the resources in the world. This is the time to be aggressive. The Gregory Soto trade, getting Baltimore to make that trade a week before the deadline. The first thing I kind of thought was, all right, Baltimore is going to be a partner with David Stearns. Maybe we're going to get a Cedric Mullins. Cedric Mullins is a guy that, I was kind of highlighting because I didn't think that we would have to give up any like top prospects for. He's a rental. He's a bit of an upgrade at center field. That production that I said, 4 home runs, 215 batting average. Cedric Mullins is, not all world, but, let me read you his latest stats. But, my thing was, all right, you're going to get a Cedric Mullins upgrade in center field. And then you're going to use some of your, maybe, I don't want to say blue chip, but your top prospects to get a guy who could start in your top 3. And then at the end of the day, you're going to upgrade. You're going to upgrade yourself with Cedric Mullins, Gregory Soto. You get a top starter, and then you see where where the chips lie, which chips you have left over for that relief pitcher. And if you don't get that righty relief pitcher, as Will Salmons suggested, you may have a Sprout go out there, become a bullpen arm, a guy who can hit triple digits, a guy who has nasty stuff. Yes, he struggled a bit in AAA. As of late, he's been much better. Maybe you put a Nolan McLean out there who's been nasty. Jonah Tong, he's in AA, so he might be a little further away. But, he's been dominating in AA. And if you think he could be a difference maker, the Mets got a couple good options in case that reliever doesn't work out. But Cedric Mullins, again, the Mets have 4 home runs thus far in center field. Mullins at this point has 15 home runs, 47 RBIs. He's batting .221, not great, 300 on base, 420 slug, 722 OPS. Now, that not all world, but 15 home runs, that's 5 times the home runs that the New York Mets have or 4 times the home runs, a little 4.5 times the home runs that the New York Mets have out of the center field position. He's a guy, he's been an all-star. He's won a Silver Slugger. He's a professional bat, gives you an additional weapon. He's a lefty. So that's a guy that I believe gives you a little more flexibility, and he would be a lot cheaper than Luis Robert. Again, his ceiling, offensively may not be as high, but I believe his floor is a lot higher. His floor seems to be a lot higher. Baltimore hasn't had the best year. Last year, in the last couple of years, when Baltimore was playing at a better level, Cedric Mullins was playing at a higher level. I could foresee this guy come to the New York Mets, come to a number 1 team, and elevate his play to play that was similar to the last couple of years. I'm not saying you're going to get his 2021 production when he had a 6.2 WAR, 30 home runs, 60 RBIs, and batted .290. But, like I said, this is a guy that has offensive potential. He's decent defensively, and he is a sure upgrade over what you have, and the price won't be as high. And, I got to believe right now that the New York Mets, because you think, like, what are the New York Mets going to do future-wise in center field? I don't think any of these answers, I don't think there's a future answer right now. Our future answer was a guy, PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, but unfortunately, we made one of the stupidest trades in Mets history, probably MLB history, by giving him away at the deadline for a Javier Baez. Now, I know people were happy that Javier Baez gave you that good production for 2 months, but you never, ever, ever should trade a top prospect, a top 5 prospect for 2-month rental. I mean, I'm 100% against that. 100% against that. I know you could have re-signed him. You could have gave him $125 million, but the ceiling for Javier Baez, I was never enamored by him at that time. Sorry, got to get more iced tea. I'm not really too excited about like any of the arms out there on the market. I mean, Sandy Alcantara is like one of the only guys that I'd be really excited about. Zach Gallen is a guy that I saw a lot of reports on, a lot of rumored that of potential trades, be clear, potential trades of Zach Gallen to the New York Mets. But Zach Gallen's always been pretty decent in his career. Like, for anybody who's followed the Arizona D-backs, he's always been very, very decent. This year, he's taken a step back in a big way, probably really decreasing his trade value. He's 7-12 with a 5.6 ERA. His strikeouts per 9 is 8.6. His whip is 1.354. Not great. His ERA, his earned runs, he's allowed the most earned runs in all of baseball, 79. And this is the most alarming thing. Thus far, he's allowed the most home runs in, I believe, the National League. Could have been all of baseball, but he's allowed the most home runs with 23 home runs. So that is a huge, huge jump. So he is signed through 2025. So that means he's going to be a free agent after this season. That's a guy that has had a very uncharacteristic year compared to his norm, his traditional numbers. So, I mean, that could be a guy where the Mets seek, all right, if they can get him at the right price, maybe. But, I think the mock trade that I saw, everybody at this point right now is Mark Vientos for Luis Robert, Mark Vientos for Zach Gallen. Every single damn trade is centered around Mark Vientos. I mean, I'm not trading Mark Vientos a guy who has a 6 ERA and for a guy who has 2 months left. I mean, it's just, it's just such a small reward. I mean, the risk reward scenario is just really not there. So, folks, it is 1:40 in the AM. How are we all feeling? Obviously, let's not, when I say how we all feeling, let's not base it on the Mets' 2 losses. How are we feeling about the Mets' chances of making impact moves for the deadline? Again, this is David Stearns' time to shine. It's make or break. This is not your first year. This is your going on your second full year. You've had plenty of time to evaluate this team, this organization, and the assessment has to be, there can only be one assessment when he assesses this team's ceiling. And that ceiling has to be World Series champions. That's where it has to be. Now, how are we all going to be able to get to that goal? How are we going to have to be to get to that goal? And I believe the path there is improving our offense in center field, probably getting 1 to 2 bats. I mean, Brandon Lowe and Cedric Mullins, or Brandon Lowe and Luis Robert. I mean, that's something that you would have to do if you consider yourself a World Series favorite. That's what you have to do. It's not just going halfway. I believe David Stearns has to put both feet in. So that's one thing. Also, too, if you're going to continue that trend, then you must get that extra pitcher. Now, the pitchers out there are, again, Zach Gallen. Does that excite you? Doesn't excite me. Unless you're getting him for a bag of balls. Doesn't excite me. Sandy Alcantara, does that excite you? I mean, that move intrigues me, but again, it has to be for the right price. Dylan Cease, and you've seen so many rumors the last couple of days, like it was almost official. I saw Sandy Alcantara going to the Mets. It was just a rumor. Dylan Cease going to the Mets. I mean, obviously just a rumor. I mean, Dylan Cease going to the Mets, I don't see it. I just don't see it. And why would the Padres do that unless the Mets are willing to ridiculously overpay? Are the Padres going to say to one of our number 1 contenders across the league, here, take one of our potential aces, especially at a discounted price? Because why would the Mets pay a ridiculously high price for just a 2-month rental? We've already said we're not giving any top echelon prices for a 2-month rental. And that's what Dylan Cease would be, a 2-month rental. Unless, and this is not David Stearns the way he's traditionally thought, unless, Cohen goes, that's the finishing piece. That's the winning piece. Move heaven and earth to get Dylan Cease. And I'm not really sure if we see Dylan Cease as the finishing piece. Sal, how's it going tonight? 1:45 in the AM. Hopefully you're feeling good. Alcantara to Queens, please. You know what? I got to say, if out of all the starters out there, that's got to be top of the list. Alcantara has to be top of the list. And Sal, the last couple of games, Alcantara has been, I want to say this, he's been almost lights out in his last 2 starts. Let's be clear. His last 2 starts have been much improved over his prior 10 starts around there. But and also too, he might see an opportunity to go to contender. I mean, that's got to motivate anybody. Sandy Alcantara right now is on the Marlins. They're not a horrendous team. They're a little less than mediocre, but they're not going to the playoffs. It's very, I don't want to say these guys aren't motivated. They're all professionals, but we're human beings. If you're on a team that is going home in October. There's a difference when you go in the hot months of summer. If you're going to potentially have that playoff run and be on a number one team, that's got to excite a competitor like Sandy Alcantara. So I could see why his last couple games have been much, much better. And if that's the case where this guy is going to be that much more motivated, and we know he has not lost in terms of stuff or velocity, that really, really, excites me as a Mets fan who really want a guy like Sandy Alcantara. I mean, folks, think of it. Like Sandy Alcantara, if he's pitching at his best, right? 2022 version, if he somehow got back there, that is the best pitcher in this organization. That is the best pitcher in this Mets organization. I mean, obviously, I haven't seen, Jonah Tong, all those guys, but they need more seasoning. Those guys aren't on the Sandy Alcantara level. If you get Sandy Alcantara back to Sandy Alcantara, or even 75% of the 2022 version, you have a very, very, very top pitcher. So that's very exciting. You just got to see what the hell the price is. Oh, see, obviously you've had a lot of disappointment before that, but yeah, I mean, how could we not have Sandy Alcantara being dealt? I mean, I gotta believe the Marlins are gotta move him. I mean, I really gotta believe. I know he's got a couple options after this year. It's not like he's going to be a free agent, but or maybe from a Marlins perspective, I always try to think of the Marlins, the other team's perspective. They may think, hey, Sandy Alcantara is finally coming into a groove. We're better off trading him over the offseason so that he can put a good last 2 months of the season together to boost his average, to boost his value. Because right now, that's why I want him on the Mets, because you're trading for him at his all-time low value. All right, folks, give me 1 minute. I'm going to be right back. I got a couple questions that I want to ask you. So give me 1 minute. I'll be right back. What's up, Juan? Tidwell, Acuna, Robert, Luis Robert, obviously. That's a trade I'm actually highly considering. Tidwell, they said that he's going to potentially be an option out of the bullpen. So I mean, but then again, you got Sproat, you got McLean. That's a lot more interesting than Mark Vientos. So Juan, I gotta say that is one that I'm putting in the highly consider box. I'm not 100% sure. Like, and the reason why I'm reluctant is it's because of the Tidwell. Like, I'm very reluctant to give up starting pitchers, but that's a good package. That's a good package. I like it. Yeah, I that's just me. I mean, it sounds like a good trade. And I would do one around Acuna. Tidwell is just one of those guys I've been following for the last 3-4 years. So I got those emotional heartstrings, which is not the way you do trades. It's not the way you do trades. So, you're probably all spot on with doing that trade. If obviously the White Sox would want to do that. Now, the thing is that I wanted to kind of pose here is I think Joe DeMayo, he said it. I forgot who said it. I was listening to somebody's podcast and they were talking about the Mets moving Mark Vientos, right? So the Mets obviously not giving away Mark Vientos, And the topic was not giving away, especially for a 2-month rental. But it was brought up that one of the only guys who potentially the Mets could possibly get is a Eugenio Suarez. Now, how many of us would want to go down that route, the Eugenio Suarez route? Suarez, I think he had some type of bone bruise in the last couple of days, but he's been a guy who this year has had his best offensive, or one of his best. I know he had 40 something home runs a couple of years ago, but he's having one of his best offensive years with the Arizona Diamondbacks this year. He's got a 3.5 wins above replacement, 36 homers, 87 RBIs, 250 batting average, 900 OPS. So he is absolutely on fire in terms of offensive production. So, I mean, is that something that you think would, and his OPS plus is 143. So is that something that you would trade a Mark Vientos for? 2 months of Eugenio Suarez. I mean, that's something that probably would make the team better in terms of hitting. I mean, Suarez, if I'm going to have my best lineup, would be the DH. Ronnie Mauricio, I still have him at third base, but Suarez in the lineup, the way he's hitting, I mean, Vientos, I think he's still on an upward projection, but he's not Eugenio Suarez at the bat, at least right now. He's not. So you'd be upgrading yourselves offensively. Ronnie Mauricio, still the defense would be, pretty decent at third, but is that an option? Would we want to trade Vientos for Suarez? Yeah, you know what, Juan? If the Mets did that, they would have to go all in. I mean, but that's what I was saying, like probably like 20, 30 minutes ago. I was saying I believe Stearns this year, or this offseason, this deadline has to go all in. I mean, if you look at the landscape of baseball right now, there's no juggernauts out there. There's no teams out there that I'm afraid of, that I'm like, all right, I don't want to run into the Braves. I don't want to run into the Phillies. I don't want to run into the Brewers. I don't want to run into, I mean, the Padres, they look a little bit interesting, but there's not that juggernaut team. Every single team out there has warts. Every single team out there has flaws. And the thing is, Vientos, again, I like him. I trade him just in the right package, a package that you automatically see improvement in the team. Like Luis Robert Jr., it's tough. It's tough for me because offensively, I believe we get worse. Because I think Vientos is going to have a better offensive production than a guy like Luis Robert, But, then again, the guy comes to a contender. Maybe he turns back the clock not that far to age 25, and that could be the difference. I think that's an element. Both him and Sandy Alcantara are playing for less than average teams. You bring those guys in this type of environment, New York City, fighting for a pennant race. If you're any type of legit competitor, and Robert Jr. has to be a legit competitor. A guy won a Silver Slugger, won a Gold Glove, finished in the top 12 MVP 2 short years ago. So guys got to be a competitor in a big slump, almost a 2-year slump. Maybe this environment brings out the best in him. But again, is that worth the Mark Vientos? Put this here. I think Vientos is going to go off now. Vientos should have had 3 hits tonight. He got robbed in the first inning, hit a bullet down the left field line. Iglesias made a nice play, robbed him of a double. Still had 2 nice hits. Yesterday should have had 2 home runs, had that grand slam. Last 15 games, Vientos is hitting over 300. Last 7 games, he's hitting over 300. The thing I like about Vientos is, I posed this, Vientos, and this is pretty common. Guys go into sophomore slumps all the time. Superstars go into sophomore slump. It happened. Was that his situation in the beginning, the first couple months? Maybe, but all we know is that when the lights were the brightest, again, I'm going to say this again and again, it's rare. You had him in New York City in the playoffs, 5 home runs, hit 5 home runs, had a very good playoff run, had a great first full season. Honestly, you can't take that away from a guy. And then he knows his name is on the trade block these last couple weeks. And when does he play the best? When does he play better than everybody else? When the pressure is the most. Why? Because he wants to get dealt? No, because I believe the guy wants to be a New York Met. I want guys who play great under pressure, and I want guys who want to be a New York Met. Plain and simple. And then at the end of the day, I know his defensive capabilities are lacking. He serves as that Pete Alonso insurance for next year. And obviously, he's 4 or 5 years younger than Pete. You got 4 years of control. You're paying him a whole hell of a lot less money than Pete. I still want Pete. I'm not saying that, but you need insurance. If Pete decides to sign a contract, 5-year, $125 million, or a contract that David Stearns doesn't want to give, you got to have somebody who's ready, a professional who's ready, who's done it before. And I know there are people who, give the job to Ryan Clifford, bring Ryan Clifford up and, sign another decent first baseman. First baseman hasn't traditionally been a hard position to fill. I mean, usually there's a lot of bats out there. None like Pete Alonso Pete's always been in the top 3, top 4, but I don't know. I'm a big fan of Pete. Juan. Stearns should just threaten Vientos all season long. Trade block, DFA seems to make him play better. Honestly, some guys need some motivation. I mean, and that's what I'm saying with guys like Luis Robert and Sandy Alcantara. How motivating is it to play for a team like the White Sox, a team that's been in last place for such a long time? I that's something that I really haven't put a lot of value on. Other people have. That's. I mean, you had the report from Mark Feinstein a couple of hours ago. They said the Mets are hot and heavy about for Luis Robert Jr. and David Stearns. I'm gonna see it's all in. Like, Juan, you are 100% right. You said that move would indicate, or one of the moves we spoke about would indicate that the Mets are all in. They got to be all in. They have to be all in. It can't always be about, oh, we're waiting for 2026, or we're waiting for 2027, when these guys are ready, or when other prospects develop, or when a free agent is on the market. You just sign the best free agent that you've signed in, God knows when. You have Sanga, you have Benaya, you have Peterson, who's an all-star, who's been pitching his best. You have Holmes, who's having a great year. Montez is a little shaky, but he's had really good moments, in a short stint. But you need that other ace guy. You need that other ace guy. So if imagine this. I mean, I give Stearns all the credit in the world if he came away with an Alcantara, a Robert Jr., like Cedric Mullins, that trade can't be as difficult. Robert Jr. would be a lot more difficult to pull off because of the guy's ceiling and because of the fact that you have an additional 2 years that you could sign the guy. The guy's got an option for 2026 and he's got an option for 2027. So this deal, if you acquire him, it could be for almost 2.5 years. And, if you compare him to Mark Vientos, he's only 2 years and 4 months older than Mark. Not that much older than Mark. Yeah, White Sox aren't going to pick up Robert's option. They better trade him for something or lose him for nothing. Now, I think the White Sox, they're playing a game of chicken right now. I think you're 100% right. They have to trade him, but they're putting it out there that they want high value back. They want the value of Robert from 2 years ago when he was an MVP. Well, the fact is they screwed up. They probably should have traded him off of that year if they wanted max value. The fact of the matter is you have to give value for the talent. The guy is not, an up-and-coming guy. He's a guy in his 6th and 7th year. And the last 2 years have been below league average. So you're going to get offers that are compensatory to what the guy is, that's just what it is. That's just what it is. And, the White Sox, just because they didn't make the deal when they should have made the deal, I mean, if I'm David Stearns, I'm not bailing the White Sox out. I'm not bailing them out. I'm giving them a multitude of offers. I'll give you choices. I'll give you packages around Acuna, Gilbert, maybe a couple pitchers that I deem that I'm willing to trade. I'll give you variations, but I'm not giving you any top echelon guys. It's just not there. And why not? Why not? Well, because although there is a higher ceiling, right, there is a pretty low floor. If he comes to New York and he produces at the same offensive level that he produced in the White Sox organization for the last 2 years, that is a failure, folks. That is a failure. And then at the end of the day, what's the excuse? You saw the guy bat like this the last 2 years. Are you surprised that he continues that same trajectory? The answer is going to be no. So I don't think David Stearns wants complete egg on his face. And that's why I think he's going to give an offer that is not going to include a Mark Vientos. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I think, like Juan, you suggested, the offer is going to be surrounded by a guy like Acuna, like a Gilbert, maybe a Blade Tidwell, like you mentioned. Probably an offer like that. And also too, in the last couple of weeks, Vientos, everybody's saying that, Vientos was not the player that he was last year. Well, I think in the last 3 weeks, he's showing you that he is, and he's just finally coming into a groove. So, that's also helped his value as well. So if the Mets are shopping him for the right trade, the right package, the way he's played in the last couple of weeks has really helped the Mets help his value and help potentially what the Mets could get back in return. Because in the beginning of this year, I didn't hear many Mets fans say, I want to trade Mark Vientos. I really didn't. But the few people that I said or that I heard wanting to trade Mark Vientos, you wanted an arm and a leg back. You wanted a lot in return. So, let's really not, I don't want to change that mentality because I don't think Vientos has really changed too much. He just had a very slumpy first 2 months. And I'm not changing my ceiling of Mark. I'm really not. I really think that he is a very dynamic hitter who hits the ball he hits the ball in the close to the 90th percentile in terms of hard hit rate. So, he's a guy with a lot of ceiling that I'd like to keep, but I know you can't keep everybody. I know there's a logjam, and I know there are ways to get the team better. So, David Stearns, it's your job, GM, get it done. Let's see this. New York. And again, everybody that's in the room, thank you so much. It is a little after 2 o'clock in the AM. We are working towards the trade deadline on Thursday. So it's Wednesday morning, 2 o'clock. So we're not that far away. We are not that far away. The New York Mets obviously coming off of two very bad, very disappointing losses, not hitting anywhere near where they should be hitting. 4 hits tonight. They were out hit 9-4 in terms of the hits tonight, outscored 7-1. Not very impressive. And this is a game where you have, your co-ace. Sean Manaea was signed as a co-ace, to Kodai Senga. So that is not good. Last night the Mets were out hit 14-6. It was a 7-6 affair. But again, they were drastically out hit. And yesterday Montas started not good at all. Four innings, 8 hits, 5 earned runs. So I mean, the impact starter that the Mets are looking for, I mean, might hopefully motivates Montas to pitch a lot better, but might ultimately take the job of a Frankie Montas. All right, Juan, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully you have a great night. Enjoy, get some Z's. I mean, at the end of the day, okay, so Eugenio Suarez, I'm gauging probably that's a 50-50 in terms of Mets fans wanting a Eugenio Suarez because I think it's going to come down to a price thing. It's really going to come down to a price. Obviously, you would want the guy at the right price. If the Mets can get him for a couple mid-level guys, you plug him in the DH spot. That drastically upgrades your DH capabilities. And then maybe if you want, then you have a guy like Mark Vientos. If you want to upgrade, get a pitcher, a starting pitcher, and a reliever, then maybe you consider trading a Mark Vientos. Now you have Eugenio Suarez at the DH. Then you can trade Mark Vientos. Maybe you trade him for Sandy Alcantara and possibly one of the other relief pitchers in the Marlins system that you like and that could help the team out this year. That would be intriguing. The Mets right now, again, have to be aggressive. Stearns has to have a whole multitude of different moves. Alcantara, he's the top of my list because other guys like Dylan Cease, Zach Gallen, I'm not liking the talent. I'm not liking what he's going through this year. Dylan Cease, you could say the same thing, but he also comes with a ridiculously high price tag. But at the end of the day, Alcantara, Dylan Cease, and Zach Gallen, they've all disappointed. They all have lowered their value, their trade value. Okay, I was just trying to look at the relievers available at the trade deadline, or the five best relievers still available at the trade deadline. Emmanuel Clase of the Guardians. Obviously, he's going through a bit right now. Jeff Passan broke yesterday. The Cleveland Guardians closer Emmanuel Clase has been placed on a non-disciplinary paid leave as part of MLB's sports betting investigation. Sources tell ESPN. Clase is the second Guardians pitcher on leave tied to the investigation, joining a right-hander, Luis Ortiz. Emmanuel Clase was thought of as the best reliever on the market. So, I mean, that means that all the other relievers' value has just gone up a bit. Okay, so let's go over five guys. I mean, I have a list here. Doesn't necessarily mean they're in order, but five potential reliever options. So one of the first. I'm sorry. So one of the first reliever options is going to be David Bednar. So David Bednar is currently on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Other guys, Mitch Keller, he's also been rumored. But David Bednar is a guy, the Pirates obviously not in on anything. They don't have a good team. But David Bednar, he's a guy that could very well be on the block. His salary and his contract situation is like this. He is a free agent in 2027. So he is a guy that you would have for a year and a half. So that's a bit intriguing. He's a guy you have for a year and a half. This year, his performance is he's 2-5. He's got a 2.37 ERA. 2.37 ERA. He's got 17 saves. He's a guy who can close. He's got a 12.1 strikeout per 9. He's pitched in 38 innings. So he's a talented guy. He's certainly a talented guy. His last year, he had a very bad season. He was very bad, 3-8 with a 5.77 ERA. So, David Bednar is an interesting guy. Like I said, because, he's having a good season. He's a talented pitcher, and he has an extra year past this year. He's a guy who has been a traditional closer in the past. He's not going to be a closer for the New York Mets. That's certainly going to the job of Edwin Diaz, of course. I'm trying to bring up the Baseball Savant so we can all see Bednar's stats. Oh, I know it. All right, so these are some of the Baseball Savant stats for David Bednar. 30 years old, 6'1", 250 pounds. He is a righty out of the pen. So he's a righty. Most of the guys left are righties. So again, he's having a very good production year. And if you look at all of his percentile, there's a lot of red here, a lot of red. He's a guy, he's got a 3-pitch mix. He's got a four seamer, a curve, and a split. He predominantly uses the four-seamer 48% of the time, curve 35%, and he uses the split 17% of the time, uses that to put away a lot of his hitters. He's a hard thrower, folks. He throws the ball 97 miles per hour. His fastball average, that is the 88th percentile. So he's another hard thrower out of the pen. I mean, I think he's a perfect complement in the 8th inning. He would be perfect. His expected ERA is 3.08, 83rd percentile. Expected batting average, 228, 74th percentile. If you compare that with Alcantara's batting average, expected batting average is like 280 something. So you could see a guy who's more in the elite range. And then if you go down, you could see where he is extremely elite. K percentage, 95th percentile K rate. But what I do like about Bednar is his control. He is in the 77th percentile in control. And that's what I like. I like control. The Mets like guys who induce ground balls. He's only in the 48th percentile. You like to see that a little higher. Let me see. In the past, last year, look, these bad year, fam, very bad year. Traditionally, he's always been around in the 40th percentile for hard hit rate. But, he's a very talented guy. He's a hard throwing guy out of the pen with a 3-pitch mix, four-seamer, curveball, and split. He's a strikeout machine. He's a guy that with good control, very talented guy. He's a very talented guy. Pittsburgh probably going to be looking for a top 10 prospect. You got to remember, if this is a guy who is not just a rental, he's a guy who has 1 year left after this year. So he's got 1 year of control left. So he's a bit more interesting than some other options. But that's the first guy first reliever, I would say probably after Emmanuel Clase, not in any order. So let's look at another reliever option. Okay, so another relief option, and we'll stay in one spot. We'll stay with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and this guy is Dennis Santana. So Dennis Santana is another option from the he's on the Pittsburgh Pirates right now. He is 29 years old. So 29 years old, production-wise, very productive this year. He is 3-2 with a 1.39 ERA in 45 innings. He's not as big of a strikeout guy, 7.1 strikeouts per 9, but very, 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 very productive this year. His career, hasn't been on that level. His career ERA is 4.19. So this year is his best year of his career. But it's not only this year. Last year, he also had a good year. In 44 innings, he was 1-1 with a 2.44 ERA. So the last 2 years of Dennis Santana's career, he has really kind of taken it to another level. So he's another option on a bad team. He's actually a same thing, free agent after 2026. So he's another guy that after this year, you have 1 year of control. So not a rental as well. So that's another option for, the New York Mets. Again, he's been productive the last couple of years. I'd want, obviously, you want the best of the best. I prefer a Bednar over a Dennis Santana, but nonetheless, he's also a very productive player as well. Okay, so here are some of the splits, not the splits, some of the stats from Dennis Santana, and you could see a lot of red there as well. Dennis Santana again. The last 2 years has really elevated his career, his stuff. So what does he have? What type of mix does he have? Um, not as I'd say it explosive as a fastball as Bednar. His average velo is in the 58th percentile, 94.7. Not as big of a K guy as Bednar, as Bednar's in the 95 percentile with K. He is in the 40th percentile. But just like Bednar, he is a control guy, 85th percentile in base on balls. We love that. 85th percentile, 70th percentile in barrel, 91st percentile in hard hit. Very good. 99th percentile in chase rate. He's got nasty pitches. Nasty, 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 nasty. His expected ERA, 91st percentile. His pitch mix is slider, four seam, cutter, sinker, changeup. Slider he uses, very nasty slider, 47% of the time. Four seam, 29%. Cutter, 11%. Sinker, 7, and changeup, 6. So Bednar has that three-pitch mix. He's more of a K guy. Two very different pitchers, but again, they get people out. His whip is 0.82, 0.82. So he induces weak contact. He induces a lot of swing and misses. This guy, chase rate 99th percentile. So this is another, very interesting option. Again, you're going to have to pay up for him. Maybe not as high as Bednar, but nonetheless, you're going to have to give up a top prospect for Dennis Santana, who, again, after this year, has another year of control. All right, so let's go into our next option. And again, we're going over all the top options. Doesn't mean these are going to be guys the Mets target, but they are top options left. So one of the other guys I have on my list is going to be Griffin Jax. Griffin Jax from the Minnesota Twins. So his numbers aren't going to look as good as Bednar or even Santana, but Jax is 1-5 with a 3.91 ERA this year. His strikeouts per nine off the freaking charts, 14.1 strikeouts per nine. The guy, nasty electric stuff in 46 innings pitched this year. Griffin Jax, again from the Minnesota Twins. ERA around 4, 1.24 whip. He's still sixth among relievers in FIP and seventh in FWAR this season. Very productive pitcher. Few pitchers have been victimized more by bad luck than Griffin Jax. Let's put it this way. Absurd production from last year. Electric. Last year, 2.03 ERA, 8.87 whip, and a career high 71 innings. He's still arbitration eligible. Sorry, can't say that 2:30 in the morning. Until 2027. Jax's contract is of tremendous value. It's going to cost you for a talent like this. We're going to look at his baseball savant, but you have this guy up until 2028. So you have him for 2 years after this year, and Jax has all the talent in the world. In terms of electric stuff, I probably have him even higher than Bednar. But again, Bednar's got good stuff as well. Let's look at I want to look at Griffin Jax's baseball savant. Okay. All right. So, like I said, you have Griffin Jackson. If you trade for him, you have him up until 2028. We know Griffin Jackson has had a lot of tough luck this year. His ERA is close to 4, 3.91. But look at this, folks. His ERA, expected ERA is 2.97. 2.97. Expected batting average, 236. Fastball velo, fireballer as well, 97 miles per hour. Average exit velo, 88.9. That's 63rd percentile. But we're going to look at this. Chase percentage, 100 percentile. Whiff percentage, 100%. I'm sorry, 99 percentile. K percentage, 99 percentile. Unlike Dennis Santana, Griffin Jacks is a K machine. And still, based on balls, 75th percentile. So he is good at locating as well. Ground ball percentage. This is a guy who gets ground balls, 71st percentile. So he would probably, out of the guys we went through, Bednar, Santana, Griffin Jacks, has electric stuff. He's the best so far at inducing ground balls. We know the New York Mets like that. He has a 5-pitch mix. So unlike Bednar, who has a 3-pitch mix, again, we see another option, Griffin Jacks, with a 5-pitch mix: sweeper, changeup, four-seam, sinker, and cutter. I mean, I value him as the best so far. So I'd rank Griffin Jacks, Bednar, and Santana. I'm not taking anything away. That's just my particular order. And, again, if you're a Mets fan, where are you looking to plug this top echelon reliever? I mean, obviously you have Edwin Diaz, so you're looking for a dominant 8th inning guy. Jack's 6'2", 195 pounds. He's a righty, 30 years old. Honestly, doesn't get much better than that. Doesn't get much better. All right, so we have 2 more relievers left. And again, this is after Emmanuel Clase, after he's not available anymore. Okay, again, we're just going over best relievers available, whether they are for the Mets or any team available or any team that wants them. All right, so the next gentleman that we must speak about, and this is a guy that the Cleveland Guardians want to capitalize on. That gentleman is Cade Smith. I mean, you got to hope, if you're the Guardians, that he's not a guy in the next couple of days that gets wrapped up in the whole Clase Ortiz gambling controversy. Hope that's not the case. But he's been excellent. This year. Smith has an ERA of 3.02, 1.19 whip through 42 innings, 44 innings, including a mighty impressive tally of 65 strikeouts. So he is a strikeout guy as well. Cade Smith. It's the Guardians are really interesting. They are an interesting team. Just checking Cade Smith's salary situation, because Cade Smith is a lot younger. He's 26 years old. So, I mean, it's really hard to see the Guardians kind of trading this guy. He's a free agent in 2030. I mean, this is just a situation where if the Guardians wanted to trade Clase and they want to recoup something back, I mean, this is another talented reliever with a heck of a lot of time. But for me, it makes no sense for the Guardians to trade this man, especially off of last year. Last year, folks, 6-1 in 74 games, 1.91 ERA. 1.91 ERA in 75 innings. Only allowed 16 earned runs in 75 innings. He struck out 103 batters. That comes to a 12.3 strikeouts per 9. He was a .90 whip, This year, his numbers aren't as good. They're not as good, but overall, you got a guy with a lot of time. He's got a live arm. In fact, let me bring up his baseball savant just because of the time. I kind of like Griffin Jacks with his stuff, but this kid's got, electric stuff as well, and you have him signed for much more time. Okay, so Cade Smith, this is some of his player profile and percentile rankings. And so far, we've talked about Cade Smith, David Bednar, Griffin Jacks, and Dennis Santana. So we have one more gentleman I want to speak about after this. And these are the top 5 relievers, in my opinion, after Class A. And most people have these guys ranked in the top 5. But Cade Smith, again, the thing that stands out about him is, again, not only does he have a very live arm, did he have one of the most dominant reliever performances last year, but he's a guy that you would have up until 2030 when he becomes a free agent. All right, so let's look at it. This year, his expected ERA, 86 percentile. Velo, 97 miles. I'm sorry, what am I doing? This is Griffin Jacks. Sorry about that, folks. This is what happens. 2:30 in the morning, gets late. Okay, so Cade Smith, again. Okay, actually, expected ERA, much, much lower. 2.73, 94th percentile. Cade Smith, he's 26 years old. Expected batting average, 212. That's probably the lowest we've seen on this reliever list. Velo, similar to what we saw on the other pitchers, 96.4 miles per hour. Whiff percentage, 95th percentile. K percentage, 96th percentile. So you got a fireballer who could strike people out. Control-wise, compared to the other 3 pitchers, he does not have as good control. But again, compared to the other 3 pitchers, he is the youngest pitcher. He's a big boy. He's 6'5", 230-pound, righty, ground ball percentage, 14th percentile, extension, 98th percentile. So you got a lot of good stuff with him. He's got a 3-pitch mix, a 4-seamer, a splitter, and a sweeper. So, this is another very, very talented young guy with a lot of time left and who's already shown himself to be a very dominant fixture in the Cleveland Guardians rotation. I mean, not rotation, their bullpen. But, any team that wants to get Cade Smith is going to have to give up, most likely, a top 5 prospect. Top 5 prospect in their system, depending on how good their system is, and they're probably going to have to give up more than that. I mean, Cade Smith, again, you got going to have him until 2030. All right, so let's go to the last guy on the list. And I don't think this is going to be a big surprise. It's going to be Johan Duran of the Minnesota Twins. Okay, I mean, Duran, honestly, he's 27 years old. He's under team control for 2 more additional seasons, and he's got top shelf stuff. I mean, cream of the crop. I mean, this is going to be the top guy. Duran has a 1.86 ERA and a 1.14 WHIP with 52 strikeouts, 48 innings this year. Consistently working in the triple digits with his fastball. He mixes in a splitter that falls out of the zone with lethal stealth. He can twist hitters into knots and draw surprisingly weak contact, boasting in the 100th percentile. Ground ball rate, 67th percentile. There is not a better reliever in the marketplace, point blank. So Duran is going to be the top guy. In a lot of people's charts, he's going to be the top guy. I'm going to bring up his savant stats, but, this guy is freaking lethal. All right, let me make sure I got the right guy up. Okay, yep, I got Duran up. Oh, make that a little bigger. Okay, so yeah, so this is Duran's percentile rankings. And, Durant, like I said, he is ranked probably the best option available in terms of the reliever market. 6'5, 230 pounds, 27 years old. This guy has a 4-pitch mix, splitter, four-seamer, curveball, sweeper. His expected ERA, 95th percentile. His expected batting average, 222. Now, look at this, folks. Look at this. This is what makes this guy special. Fastball velocity, 100th percentile. Average fastball, 100.2. 100.2. Kid's 27 years old. He's got 2 years left on his contract. And he's got some of the nastiest, filthiest stuff. So you got 100-plus fastball, and you got a splitter that just falls out of the strike zone. Crazy, 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 crazy. Barrel percentage, 99th percentile. And then this is what David Stearns and many general managers, presidents love. Ground ball percentage. They pound the ball into the ground because of that splitter. 99th percentile. This kid is insane. Insane. Again, it's going to take you a very top 5 prospect. Probably, Twins, if they're trading him, they're going to look for your top prospect, top 3 prospect. I mean, it's insane. And when some of these guys go, then it's going to give you a lot better gauge on what is the market, what teams are going to be asking for. I'm saying top 3 prospect in your system, top 5 for Griffin Jacks, but we got to see what teams are getting. I mean, Yankees years and years ago when they traded Aroldis Chapman and, they got a couple top prospects back, you got to see what the market was. Then the Mets trading, Robertson a couple years ago. You got Marco Vargas, obviously, where'd he fall in the system? But, you gauge what is the market for that particular year. And I gauge based on the amount of buyers, based on the amount of teams believing they could win the World Series. And because there is no dominant team, everybody believes they can win the World Series. You're the Yankees, you're the Rangers, you're the Mariners, you're the Mets, you're the Dodgers, you're the Phillies, I was just about to say the Braves, call myself. You're the Padres, Cubs. Honestly, there are a lot of buyers on the market, right? Few sellers. So that means demand high. Demand is going to be high. Supply is going to be low. So that means price high. Any economics people here, easy. Demand, supply and demand here. Low supply, high price, high demand. So we'll see in the next couple of days. And then you can also, and that's why the Mets, I believe they get a very high grade on the Gregory Soto trade. Getting, Soto is not of these bullpen options level, not anywhere near their level. Great option. Great. I love that trade. I love that they got him. Lefty option. That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. And again, aggressive move by David Stearns, securing that number 1 need out of the bullpen early on. But if he gets one of these top 5 guys, and actually I want to include Santana, those 4 guys are of a different level. If he gets any of those 4 guys, and I'm going to, let me, if you don't remember, David Bednar, Griffin Jacks, Cade Smith, and Johan Duran, if he can get one of those guys, that would be next level. Next level, you get one of those guys. You want me to paint you the perfect scenario? You get a Duran, right? Obviously, we're talking pie in the sky. You get a Duran, you get a Sandy Alcantara, so you got your 8th inning, guy. You already pair him with Gregory Soto. Then you get your center fielder. You get Luis Robert for the right price. Then you get Sandy Alcantara for the right price. So you get some upside there. And then I'm going to get a Brandon Lowe. Eugenio Suarez, I'm not the biggest fan. I'm not the biggest fan for the 34-year-old guy. I'd rather get, a guy like Brandon Lowe. That's just me. Because, on the New York Mets, I look at New York Mets. We got plenty of power, plenty of power. Alvarez, Mark Vientos, these guys start hitting like they hit. Couple that with Alonso, Lindor. God, Lindor, come on. A little concern about him. Soto. So the Mets have enough power. I want some contact guys, and guys who play D, guys who play defense. All about defense and pitching. That's what David Stearns built the Milwaukee Brewers franchise on. And the Milwaukee Brewers, top team in all of baseball. Milwaukee Brewers, top farm system in all of baseball. I mean, Stearns is the architect of two of the top teams in all of MLB. Now, the Mets farm system isn't as broadly ranked as the Milwaukee Brewers farm system, but give time to David Stearns, because obviously he was there for a bunch of years. Kids had time to develop. So, all right, folks, I think we got the show around 3 hours right now. A lot of people, a lot of Mets fans probably in night land dreaming of the best trade or whatever the best trade is in your perspective, and probably everybody waking up, going on X, going wherever you go to get your news, trying to see if the Mets have made a move. Well, right now, obviously, it's really late. We're going to have a lot more coverage for this trade deadline. I appreciate everyone sticking with us. Through this very kind of long show. I appreciate everyone. So everyone, I want to wish you a very great night. Good night. Again, if you could like the button on the way out, or if you are rewatching this, hit that like button. I really appreciate everything. I appreciate all of you. Thank you, and thank you. We're going to end it now. Have a great night, folks. And obviously, let's go Mets.